Oh, crazy. Hi.
Hi, Willow.
I will give you the room, and I'll just be in the background if you need me.
Yeah, thanks for all your help, Willow.
No
We
problem.
love you. You're doing a great job
Thank
today.
you very much.
All right, everyone. It is my supreme pleasure and honor to introduce you to cosplay photographer Lacy Clagg. Um, Aside from having done several of our Phoenix Sisters cosplay photo sets that you've seen, or some of the solo ones of me, she also photographed my wedding. So, I mean, all of my compliments of her may seem a little biased, but I wouldn't have booked her for all of these things if she weren't amazing. And one of the things she does is she goes to conventions in the Indianapolis area and elsewhere and teaches people how to do great superhero poses and various other photography poses. So, without further ado, this is the Multiverse Fundraiser, and we're about to do Posing Like a Superhero with photographer Lacy Clagg. Hi, Lacy.
Hey, Graylee. Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here and to participate in the fundraiser. Plus, I'm digging like this digital environment instead of having to, put real pants on and go to the convention. But I'm really excited to talk about posing and how you can be more dynamic, whether you're taking your own photos or whether your friend is taking them. Like if you're working with an amateur photographer in the middle of a hallway, or you're working with a professional photographer like me. There's a lot of just tiny little tips that I'm going to condense into a bunch of stuff right here. But feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat. And I know the girls are going to be popping them through, and I'm going to try to keep an eye on them too. So that way we can kind of get through those. And I'm not here to gatekeep. I'm here to share all of the knowledge. So let's get started. If you want to throw up that first panel, and then let's get into this information. Awesome. So this is just kind of my title. This is kind of just some samples of my artwork and stuff. I've been doing this professionally for going on almost 20 years. And I've been going to conventions actually since the first Gen Con here in Indianapolis, which was 2003, I believe. We've taken our kids who are now 16 and 18 to the conventions, whether they were in strollers and cosplay, running around with their girlfriends. So now they're like grown adults and they still go and get 4-day passes with us. But I travel all over the different Midwest conventions, and those are all located on my site. What I do in 2022, everything from like Origins, FairyCon, C2E2, Gen Con, PopCon, Comic-Con. I love the small ones like In Conjunction and Hoosier Con and stuff like that too. The first thing that I always let people know is that it does not matter what you are wearing, whether it's a thousands of dollars costume that you bought, or that you put together a closet cosplay, or as I call it, Goodwill cosplay, because it's the night before and we've decided, oh, we're going to do this. And like, we just run to Goodwill and throw stuff together. I can make you go wherever you want to go, but you need to have that story. You need to be able to say, I want a certain environment for my character. Cosplay is very personal for a lot of us, and I want to embody that in whatever imagery I create. This is a sample that we took at C2 in the hall with some lighting. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But it was just some natural lighting coming through the window. But she showed me that she wanted to be in this Breath of the Wild atmosphere. She wanted to be on a rock looking out at her future. And so that's what we did. I wanted to put her out on a cliff somewhere. And this was a great pose, lots of triangles, which we're going to talk about later. But it's something that I can embody in any image. So this next slide is showing something that we did in studio. Well, not technically, because we did it at a local game shop here in outside of Indianapolis in Brownsburg, Valkyrie's Vault. And this is Amy. Amy put together just a simple gypsy cosplay from her closet, and she wanted to be like a tavern wench, a D&D tavern wench. She wanted to have, you know, little sparks coming up from a fire, which you'll see in the right-hand corner. She wanted to have barrels. She wanted to have candlelight. She wanted to have a little bit of magic. She didn't have time to touch up her hair before we shot, but that's okay, because the magic of Photoshop, I could digitally go in and paint in like the green highlights and the things that she wanted. I wanted to give her little elf ears too. But we ended up nixing that because she wanted to be a human, and that's fine. But just creating that environment is so important. The next slide here is something that I really love to work on, is duplication of images. So this one was actually commissioned by Wizards of the Coast for Magic the Gathering. It was when this first expansion was getting ready to release, and they wanted promo images. So they picked out so many, I think it was like 10 cosplayers and then 10 photographers, and they paired us up to recreate a card. So I was able to go in and duplicate. We worked on the posing. We worked on how I digitally painted the backdrop. You can see how we were able to kind of put this together. And little things that you might notice, since we were able to do it in my studio, certain things are not super cohesive, but you want them to look great if you're at a convention, right? And I'm talking about the arm paint and the hand paint and the face paint, right? So if you're here for a photo shoot, then you don't have to necessarily do all of that. I told her, I was like, do what makeup you can, you know, on your face to give me an idea of how, but honestly, I could have digitally painted all that in, and you can see that I did kind of change the hue. But like on her arms and hands, I was like, don't worry about it, because I can add that in. That's something that can easily be painted in and adjusted just for the tone. So it was a really fun project. Here's another example. This is Lee Tapscott, he is pretty known, and he judges a lot of different cosplay competitions, and he has the most fun cosplays ever. He works with so many different people. We did this, I think, at Days of the Dead or Horror Hound in Indy, and he wanted like a spooky, mansiony backdrop, candles, you know, all kinds of stuff. The dress, if you'll notice a little detail, the bottom half was kind of sheer, and she had mentioned that she wanted it more solid, more long, elongated, and elegant. So that's what we did. We just kind of, you know, create whatever imagery that you need us to create, if that makes sense. Yeah, Lee is such a great guy. Here is another one. Now, and you can see in the sample image, this is a really cool family. They get together and do a really cool cosplay for Gen Con every year, and they're all family. There's a bunch of them. There's actually, I think, 3 different aliens, or no, 2 different aliens that they made. The littlest one on the bottom right is actually one of the kiddos in the family. But we were able to do a different shot of every person individually, and then I pulled it all in together. But we were able to do this in the middle of a hall, but they had an image of, they wanted to be on one of the ships. They wanted to have the aliens crawling on the ceiling. They wanted to have smoke coming out of the guns. Little details like the smoke on the cigar, things like that. I was like, you know, you just tell me what you want to make this vision. The more information I have from a client, the better it is. I always tell Crayley and Kelly, I'm like, just tell me, sky's the limit. You know, what do you want? Because whatever details I have, I can break those down and kind of create magic with that. Oh, and we're making progress. I see we've got an update. We're at 395. Here's another example of some cool stuff that we can do. You just got to put your imagination to it. This was a quick shot at a wedding. My typical day job photography is families and newborns and maternity and the few weddings that I do. But we can always make it geeky. We just shot a couple little things at the very end. One of my clients, she's a huge Harry Potter buff, and her husband to be is this huge Star Wars buff. So we did a bunch of cool stuff. So here's some of the basics that you need to know. You need to relax. Be comfortable. In the studio, I usually have music going. I prefer like jazz or something with an upbeat that kind of get you in the mood for whatever you're doing. If you want to do some angry poses, we can play like something harder. If you want to do more pretty princess stuff, like we can play Disney songs. It's literally whatever you want to do. If you are comfortable, you're going to do better in your posing, because the more uncomfortable you are, it kind of shows on your face. Something that I always like talk about every time I do any of my panels at any of the conventions is also to be safe. Do not be afraid to bring a friend or multiple friends or family members, whether you're meeting in a hallway at a convention or you're coming to someone's studio. I think it's very important to have safety, to have those friends around us. Unfortunately, not every person is a good person. So I just always like to touch on that, because I do see a lot of kiddos that come in that are, 15, 16, 17 with their cosplays. And I just want them to be safe. I want everybody to be safe. I'm doing it now, but my next thing is hunchback. It's always good. I always tell people, I'm like, just roll your shoulders. So you can get kind of that, it just naturally sets those back, right? But I was sitting here like this, hunched over. I do it. Everybody does it. It's fine. Like, you just want to roll it over, right? If you have a preferred better side, which is actually typically on the side you part your hair, most people's good sides are on that part. Just let me know if you say that, or any photographer that you're working with, or if your friend's taking your picture in the hallway. Say, hey, I prefer my left side. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Another thing is magic hands. I think it's very important to show both of your hands in any posed picture that you have. If you are sitting and doing a sitting pose, I'll always have a hand like out and another hand out, because I think that it lends to the balance. Same thing with feet. A lot of people want to line their feet up, and I will always have someone tilt their feet. So that way I can kind of get both. It adds to the dimensionality of the pose. Let's see. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is just hand movement in general. You can see from the top left image there that they are gripping that wand. Someone is always coming in and wanting to like grip, whether it's a staff or a wand, super, super hard like that. And it's not good. You want to kind of loosen up on that grip. You can still have a nice grip, like in the second image there. And you're going to be able to see your fingers. You're not going to be stressed. There's not going to be like weird muscle things going on in your arm. And that can kind of go through with different things, like whether you're holding a dagger or whether you're holding a lantern. Just different things can kind of mean different things. Like the lantern on the left, they're very determined. They're running through a labyrinth, right? But the lantern on the right, they're daintily looking through the woods, looking for something mysterious, if that makes sense. So Crayley asked a question, do you like when cosplayers have their own pose ideas that comes up when the shoot, like during the shoot? I love that. I actually tell people to screenshot and send me imagery beforehand if they can, so that way we can help either duplicate that pose or come as close to what we can, because everyone's body shape is obviously not the same. Not everyone is as handicap capable as others. So we need to make sure it's perfect for how you want. There's a lot of animated or cartoon women that are very elongated. They don't do realistic poses with long legs, and their torsos are so long. So I think it's good to kind of be able to let me see that beforehand, so we can kind of go and alter that pose to fit your body shape. But I think that having information, because again, cosplay is such a personal experience, and having photos of a cosplay means that you really care about what you're doing and that you love this cosplay. So my job is to make sure that I'm representing that well for you, if that makes sense. So let's go back over and talk about triangles. Triangles are a pleasing shape. I went to school for photography and art and marketing back in the day. And triangles is the big thing. Like if you look at Superman here, he's got his hands on his waist in a dominant pose, right? And he's got those nice triangles shown from his arms. The way that his shoulders are also set from his head to each shoulder is also a nice triangle shape. If you look on the left-hand side, you see that there's multiple triangles going on with her legs, with her various arms, the way that her body is leaning over. Triangles look so nice. It just is so pleasing to our eyes and the way our brain interprets them. Use those arms, bend those arms. I always tell people, like, if you've got a joint, you need to bend it, whether it's fingers or whether it's elbows or anything. You don't want to just be straight. You want to bend it up, right? So our next pose is, our next slide is talking just about how you see on the left, Bonnie is just kind of like, oh, just down, right? But then if I just have her pull that arm up into a triangle, roll her shoulders a little bit, and then pull that hand in front of her, it changes the whole pose, right? And so it goes from her looking kind of silly, right, into like a little bit more of a dominant pose. Same thing with using objects. I have these, I actually have a few different of these crystal balls that I love to use, but you can see having it close to you gives one kind of look, but pushing it out in front of you also creates a dynamic energy. Just like if you were to have a sword in your hand, that's also going to make it more dynamic. I photographed Sammy, an awesome anime ninja gal. She was like a warrior goddess at Indiana Comic-Con this past year. And so we did some cool shots with the sword kind of coming off to the camera, but in front. So moving those things that kind of makes a dynamic, it makes it more dynamic. It adds to the magic of it. Having things in front of you, having things behind you, etc. So don't hide a limb. Don't hide your weapons. You see, even in this pose, Batgirl, you can see both of her hands. You can see both of her feet. She's a little bit twisted just so we can see that it's not fully flat, right? If you're sitting, you want to keep those legs to the side or bent. It distorts your silhouette. So if she was to twist and have those knees straight at the camera, then those knees are going to be closest to me and her legs are going to look weird. It's going to look distorted. I actually had her bend, and so you can't really tell in the pose, but she's kind of leaning with that right shoulder towards me because I wanted to make sure I had a really good angle of her face and making sure it was completely balanced. We actually took this picture on a rooftop downtown Indianapolis on top of a parking garage, I think. But we were able to edit in and add all kinds of really cool stuff. Don't mind my dog in the background. Here's some more samples of different things that are little tips. The first two pictures are lighting. So you want to always look where your lighting is coming from. If your lighting is coming from one side and you're turning away, it's going to shadow that face. Now, you may want that for a certain kind of dynamic angle, or if you're trying to recreate something that has that shadowed side, but light is always best. You want to have that light. So just by having her turn, you can see that light that's casting more on her features. You can see the reflection in her eye. It just adds more balance. Her hair looks a little bit more dynamic in the front. Another thing is sitting. I love sitting poses, but you can't just sit and forward face. It's going to look distorted. Again, you want to kind of bend up. You want to kind of, like in that bottom photo in the middle, she's got both of her legs crossed and kind of bent up, and she's got those fingers moving. Both of her hands are in the picture and not distorted. In the one in the top right, similar idea, only she crossed her ankles, so that way her knees were a little bit together but to the side. But again, showing those hands and tilting her face towards the light. So,
hey, Lacy,
yeah,
we are almost halfway through. This is going so fast. Can you believe it? This is really helpful information. I just want to say for anybody who's just now joining us that this is the Multiverse Fundraiser. We are benefiting actress Valerie Perrine in her battle with Parkinson's disease. If you're listening to an audio-only recording of this later, the donation link is tinyurl.com/MVFR22. Every donation of $10 or more gets you entered for up to 20 prizes all at once going to one person. We're going to have 3 winners, 40 prizes. It's great. Forward your receipt email to phoenixsyscosplay@gmail.com. Lacy, take it back away. Let me drop myself back out of the feed.
Awesome. Okay, so next we're going to talk about is twisting. Like how I've mentioned in a couple of the different slides, you want to bend it a little bit, just enough. Just like this gal here, we had her just kind of twist a little bit to add a little bit more dynamic to the pose, right? Elbows and knees were bending. Remember, your eyebrows show emotion. So if you're super nervous, a lot of people get like a furrowed brow. But if you're playing a character and you need it to be more wide-eyed, remember, just pop those eyebrows up, okay? Another thing that a lot of us get concerned with, and you can tell me these things, okay? I'm not going to share anything or anyone's concerns or things that they want to change, are double chin, okay? Something that you need to do is pop that chin up, put your tongue up. It's called mewing. And it can make all of that stuff underneath your chin kind of go away. We all have it. I know I definitely have it, especially after COVID. We all gain weight in different places, and it's okay. Like, if you don't want me to edit anything, I don't have to edit anything. But if it's something of an insecurity that you would like me to change, I can do that. Okay. Sometimes when we are turned too much and our arms are out front, if you can put me up on the screen, I'm going to show everybody this. Okay. So if you're out, right, a lot of people want to immediately hold their arm against their body, right? But what does that do? That makes it just flatten out, right? But if you hold it out, look at that difference. Okay. And this is an insecurity for a lot of people. It's an insecurity for me, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. We all have stuff, right? But just remember, there's little tips. So if you just tell me, I can fix things. If we forget and you have it close and you say, hey, Lacy, you sent me that gallery, image 3. I don't know if I like the way my arm looks. Is there any way that you can like push it in? Because I had it against my body. That's what I'm here for, okay? And then this, right? So 2 things. I don't have one of my lights over here, but I wrap light to kind of pull this away, right? Because if there's light right here, it takes away the shadow. But also, if you just say mu, right? It pulls that up when you pop your chin out and put your tongue in the back. Little tips. Models use them all the time. So like, why can't cosplayers? Why can't everybody, right? Okay, let's pop back over to the slide. So think about where your light's coming from. Think about how it affects your photos. Think about where your shadows are. If you're making magic in your hands, you don't want to be casting shadows all over your body, right? So another trick that I like to do is turn on a camera light, okay? And you can hold that, right? Look at that, right? So you can do your pose and have a friend hold a light, like while we're in the hallway or while I'm here. I have different stuff like this cool light wand and little lights, right? But if you have a magic fireball, is the light going to be in your hand like this, shadowed, or is it going to be like this, right? So it's little tips and tricks. I mean, that's just my cell phone, but like, I know we have fancy LEDs and stuff like that, but little things. Think about your light. Think about where it's coming from. A lot of times in the studio, I'll use real candles. So that way I can get that reflection in the eye. Just like you see the little highlight right there in my eyeball. Same idea. If you are holding a candle in your cosplay or something like a lantern, something that's lit up, right, then you can have that reflection in your eye. So next we're going to talk about slow flow posing. Okay. This is something that models do typically when I'm working with like fashion models and professional models. It's something that they are taught at agencies, and that is creating natural movement that makes better for photos. So if you have a sword, I'm going to have you swing it at me. If you are a character that's bouncing around, I'm going to have you jump around. I'm going to have you dance. If you have a tool, I'm going to have you use it. If you have a hat, we're going to tip it. We're going to take it off. If you have a dress, I'm going to have you do the motion with the dress and, you know, flow it out or throw it out, or have someone take one of my reflectors and kind of waft it at you to kind of create that movement. I would rather take a bunch of movement poses than poses like if you're just standing still, like just one of. Okay. I think that having that motion really makes it more dynamic and more believable in certain photos. Now, if you're just sitting on the bench, that's one thing, right? But if you are supposed to be walking down a path, that's another thing, right? And you can always look for my light flashes or the clicks from my camera. Whenever I'm at conventions, if I'm not using my studio lighting, I turn on the sounds on my cameras so that way you guys can easily hear those. So Willow asked, oh, when should we flex versus not? That we're going to get into that greatly. What did Willow ask? How do you feel about school picture photographers photoshopping children's pictures? Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm not a huge fan of school photography, mainly because most of the people that are thrown into those positions are not trained. I've talked to a lot of them. A lot of them are just, they don't know. They don't know the cameras. They don't know the lighting. They are told to set lights in a certain way. They are told to have the camera in a certain way. They have to take it a certain way. It frustrates me as a mom of a kiddo that wears glasses because there's always a reflection in the glasses, and all they have to do is move that light up a little bit on the stand that it's on, and there would be no reflection. Okay. It's just raising the light a little bit. But when they come to doing like the extra edits on the school photos, they basically just run a filter. So there are programs that are basically like a souped up Instagram. Okay. Adobe has one, Lightroom. Now you can do a lot more stuff with Lightroom, but they do have presets on them, and they have Like basically you can smooth out everything. I think for kids, it's important not to do anything like that because it's really going to disrupt their image of themselves. It's very different for an adult to be concerned about like our arm flap, compared to a kiddo that is, concerned about any features because it's really going to affect them. Yeah, a Cuff Creations, yeah, they definitely shouldn't be doing any filters or anything like that. I actually have a huge amount of my clients that just come to me. I do quick school picture minis where they just come in for a few minutes. And anytime that anyone books me for a family photo, I try to get individuals of all the kids because I always hated all my kids' school photos. I have them because it's a part of growing up. Some of them look awkward. I feel like they always photographed my youngest right after lunch. So he always had food on his face and on his shirt. So I think that's funny to keep and have. But I think them adding all of these Photoshop things to it, no. I even get concerned with overly Photoshopped teenage photos, especially for senior photos, because teenage girls are so impressionable, and to have filters and things pushed over them and altering the way they look, just not a fan. So let's go back and we'll talk about some masculine, feminine. So this goes out to any character. My favorite cosplay to do personally is Han Solo because number one, I love Han Solo, but also pants. So if I want to crawl around and do a photo shoot at a convention hallway and I'm like laying on the ground shooting at a weird angle, I can. If I'm in a dress, I definitely can't do that. So this is for anybody that wants to cosplay any character whatsoever, because I firmly believe you can do and be anything you want, right? So masculine, most of the time, hands are going to be on their hip bones, like in that Superman pose. A feminine pose for that would to be to put it on their natural waist, which is going to be higher, right? Where it kind of dips in a little bit underneath our breasts, right? That's more of a natural waist. So that's more feminine, and this is more masculine, right? Okay, so next thing is going to be, where's that slide at, Grayley? There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, so jaws out, right? So a masculine pose, a lot of time, they'll want to kind of clench their jaw and pop that jaw out, right? Feminine posing is going to be more like I tell people to purse their lips a little bit and just to breathe out or go, whoo, right? It's going to give it a little bit more feminine look to the mouth, right? Whereas popping a jaw out is going to be more of a masculine look, right? Flexing. I think flexing is great. That's when that dynamic movement comes in if you're going to be swinging a sword. But you can always be like, oh, I really want to look big and strong in this. And I'll say, okay, ready, 1, 2, 3, flex, and have you flex real quick and then pull right back out. Okay. Another thing is your hands, right? See on the image on the left, she is gripping that sword super, super tight, right? And that's going to be a strong hand flex, right? And then on the right-hand side, we've got gentle hands. You can see that bottom hand, she's just delicately holding it, right? Same thing about feet. If you've got them more spread out, it's definitely makes you into a more masculine stance. If you want more feminized, you can have your feet kind of pulled together and crossed. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of lean towards one or the other. And just because you're like, if she wanted to be a Jedi that was in more masculine stance, then we could have done that as well. So it's just a matter of like what you want to pull forward on those photos. Let's see. All right. So I think that is kind of everything that I usually go through. I try to get all of that information out so that way we can kind of, these are just a million little tips, and I could probably add a million more, but I never know how many questions are going to pull through and, what topic we're going to end up talking about, because especially when I'm at panels and live events, everyone has different questions and kind of what they want for their character. I know the last time I was at PopCon, we got on a huge discussion about weapons and like best ways to hold weapons and to show them off in photos, so that way they can show off that work. Because there's one girl, she had this huge axe. It was like 6 foot tall. It was massive. And it's like, how are we going to take a cool photo without it blocking you completely? you know? So there's so much that I can do and that we can do when working together. Whether it's a hallway shoot that I usually do, a couple images for everybody, right? I'd usually do like 1 or 2. Or if we're in the studio, when I can control everything, I can set that rim light on your hair. I can set like a cool LED light in the backdrop. I can set up like all of my different lighting systems here. I'm going to show you how quick and easy some of this lighting is. It's literally an app I control. And so we can do all kinds of effects. I did a shoot out in the woods across from the studio that we laid one of my LEDs on the ground, and I did it like super bright orange light because they were doing a cosplay where they were sitting around a campfire. And so we wanted that glow effect. We wanted that orange. We wanted that fire effect. So I like the green. I think the green looks cool. But do we have any more questions? Craylee, do you have any?
I mean, I definitely want to encourage anybody who's viewing to still send questions in, because of course during one of your panels at a convention, this would be where people are lined up. I wanted to tell 2 short, quick stories about our shoots.
Yeah.
So something that Lacy works really hard on, and if you have any other photographer who's ever been willing to do a weather dependent shoot for you, like, you need to, if they're a hugger, give them a hug. If they are food motivated, bring them snacks, because it is so difficult to arrange those. My husband and I did Ramona Flowers and Scott Pilgrim on their first date at a park, and we needed snow coverage, and of course Lacy could have added some in, but we weren't going to be cold. Like my husband and I, as far as actors and cosplayers, we're not going to have as good of like poses and effects of like huddling together and like walking close together, partially because it's just cold if she had not gone to doing that snow. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of your weather shoots?
Oh my gosh. Weather is fun. I love shooting in all different types of weather. I know there's a lot of photographers that won't do it. But all of my gear, it's all weather safe. And I also have all like bags and stuff that I put over everything to kind of help it. But I have business insurance. So, hopefully all that is covered. But I love shooting on the snow. Actually, after this, because we just got some snow here in Indiana, I have a couple shoots that I'm getting in, because this is the first like decent-ish snow that we've gotten, and I've got more tomorrow. But I think that while I can Photoshop in certain things, it's much better to be able to be in the real thing. Same thing with rain. I love rain. A lot of people get married like on spring dates. Guess what happens? It rains. So what I do is I set up a light behind the couple. I set up another light in front. I have them hold umbrellas. We light up the umbrellas. I freeze the light in the water all around them. Makes cool stuff, I think that is a good trademark of a professional photographer, that they can work in anything. Do I like to shoot cosplay stuff during the convention at midday out in the high sun where it's going to be crazy shadows. No, I'm going to say we're going to go in the hallway. But if you really wanted a certain look to it and you wanted it to be out there and that is our only choice, then yes, we're going to do it. Like, I'm going to work around it. I have different tricks that we can do, because ultimately it's about what the vision is for that cosplay. That's what it comes down to. Yes. So do I have recommendations for training your face to make certain expressions to match characters or tones? Yes. What you need to do is practice in front of the mirror. I don't know if you can see it here, but I have a full length mirror over here. It's literally in here so people can, number one, look, double check, fix anything that they need to fix, but also practice in expressions. There's nothing wrong with standing in the mirror. That's literally what professional actors and actresses do, is they duplicate it. They look in the mirror, they practice, just like with anything else. Anything else, you've got to duplicate.
And a cosplay tip specifically for if you've got a really made up face is to practice some of your more crazy expressions, your more facially moving expressions right after you apply your lipstick or your eyeliner. Because if it's going to smudge something, you'll know while you're still right there at the sink and you can fix it or figure out like how you need to
or cracks.
Or
face makeup, if you're wearing like a solid tone, like a blue face makeup, right? Or green, if you're doing like a Gamora or something, right?
If you have black lipstick and you're gonna snarl, do it in the mirror while you've still got the lipstick in your hand, because you might not have gotten that lipstick far enough down inside your lip.
Yes.
And it tastes gross, but the photos look way better if you just get a little extra.
Yeah, that little,
lipstick.
even with red, it doesn't matter the color. Literally, I Photoshop this. I always look for it because I know that's going to happen. But that's okay. I mean, it's a makeup thing. You know, we can't control everything, especially in the middle of a convention when it's crazy busy. There's a million things going on. You're sweating because you're wearing leather and latex and like 30 million other fabrics. Okay. Certain things are going to happen. So I don't want anybody to freak out if they have like smudges from mascara and stuff, because if they don't belong there, just tell me, just, hey, I'm sweating. Like, can you fix that? You know, just kind of Photoshop it out. I'll do it. It's okay. But yeah, test out everything. So, and like I said, if you come here to the studio, you don't even have to wear necessarily everything that you're doing, because like I said, if I have a general idea or if I have a photo to work with, then, you know, I'll just Photoshop it. I mean, that's, you know, what I prefer, because it might be easier than having that black lipstick on, or it might be easier than painting your entire body green. So
I'm doing a Mystique cosplay probably in March, and I'm like, if I can only paint my face and do blue like arm socks and leg socks, if I'm working with a great photographer like you, I know you're going to make sure the blue on my face and the blue on my arms and legs match in tone perfectly, even if my makeup and my fabric aren't perfect tone matches.
Yeah. I mean, there's even like, I mean, not everybody has a budget like we've talked about, like for a super expensive cosplay too, right? So I've worked with people that have shown up in Party City costumes. And I'm just like, okay, what do you want it to look like? I shot a Wonder Woman like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was like all plastic. And she was like, I just couldn't afford it. She was like, stuff came up. I couldn't afford to get the nice stuff. She was like, I'm going to cancel my shoot. Like, I'm sorry. I was like, no, you don't have to cancel your shoot. I was like, what do you want it to look like? Which version? You know, are we doing comic? Are we doing movie? What are we doing? Send me some screenshots. Are you doing like, you know, a fan-based art version? It's fine. Just show me what we're working with. And I was able to make everything look gold and add in the leathers instead of it being plastic, or people that wear like the big puff suits, right? Like I did a Black Panther and he was wearing like the fake muscle stuff, which obviously didn't look great. And I got into a little argument about somebody that was in the hall with us because they were like, I can't believe you're getting pictures because your cosplay is so cheap. I was like,
Oh,
It's literally for fun. It's literally for fun. I will fight you. Like, um, anybody can look amazing. Okay. And I love putting in that work. I want someone to be like, oh my God, this is magical. How did we even create this? And I'm like, that's you. That's literally you. I just added some special effects. So, but Willow had said we have a rule in our cosplay group. If the pose is awkward or uncomfortable, it's perfect. Sometimes, depending on the angles, especially I think Black Widow poses, Spider-Man poses, and stuff like that for sure. Like, but if you're doing something that is very real and personal to you, like we should be able to come up with a pose that you're not uncomfortable. I think that there's always some kind of pose that is going to be personifying the character, but also being you. Because, you know, someone that's saying doing Harley Quinn, it's not like that is Harley Quinn. That is Crayley as Harley Quinn. And that's what I want to see.
also, like, there's no shame in asking your photographer to like turn the camera around and show you
Oh,
what
yeah.
you're working with, because then you're gonna, like, it might have felt awkward, but if it looked good, you're like, okay, I'm gonna do that again.
Yeah.
Whereas if it felt awkward and the photographer turns the camera around and you think it looked awkward,
If you look strained,
right? You
like,
don't, you can
if
try
there's
something
fear in your
different.
eyes. But no, yeah, I'm a big believer. I shoot when I'm shooting with my cameras, I want it to look as close to what I want the finished image plus effects to be. I don't want it underexposed. I don't want your skin to be too bright. I want it to be really close, right? So what you see should be fairly close to what you're getting, right? Not all photographers will show you the back of cameras, but I will, because I don't care. Like, I want you to see what you look like. I want you to see if you like that pose. You know, I want you to browse through real quick and be like, oh yeah, that's the one right there. That is the money image right there. I love that one. Also, don't be afraid to be like, okay, you've got your light up here, but this is my better side. Can we move the light so that way I can keep that pose? Because these things are light. They're not that heavy at all. And a lot of times, my oldest son, who's 18, I have him come and assist me, and those lights all come out like that, and they're basically like big bricks. So he's like 6 foot. So he just holds it up for me. So if we need to have him walk to the other side, it's not a big deal. Like, you're paying these people. There's no reason why you can't ask them a question, ask them for help, or ask them to move things for you.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing about, if I wanted to, I can't think of the word that I want. Expand. There we go. Every time I'm live, every time. If I wanted to expand a little bit, when you were talking about creating dynamic movement,
Mm-hmm.
if you're the type of cosplayer who gets embarrassed when you're working with a photographer, whenever they ask you to do something like jump in the air, even just a little bit, because I mean, Lacy, you know, our Superboy and Wonder Girl photos, you had me jump, you had my husband jump, and then
Yeah.
put us together, and it looked like we were actually flying. If I had been too embarrassed to jump up off the ground a little bit, we wouldn't have those amazing photos where you took a small movement that probably did not look that silly to people around, by the way. One, if
No.
you're at a convention, people are expecting you to be doing unusual looking things anyway. But
100%.
even like, we were at a park, you know, we were out in public, and I didn't have to jump that high. But if I
No.
had felt too silly to do it, we wouldn't have had my favorite photo from that whole photo shoot. So
Yeah. Well, and something else that you can ask as well is especially, so even with Gen Con, as big as it is, or C2E2 as big as it is, there are still halls that aren't being used. They don't use the entire space, right? So if I were to have, and I have had in the past, clients be like, hey, I don't know if I want to do my pictures in front of everybody. Can we move to like a more private spot, or do you know like a more empty spot? That's fine. Tell me. Now, we might have to change the time, because a lot of times when I'm doing my shoots in the hall, I kind of book them back to back to back. So that way I can set up my lights and be like in one little spot for a while. So I might move you to the end of the day or the beginning of the day. Or sometimes I've used the panel rooms, like after the panel, depending on when my panels are, to shoot in. So it just depends, but you can always ask that. If you want it more private, there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's no wrong question. There's no wrong question.
For sure. I mean, this is a product you buy from someone that is gonna affect the way you see yourself later. Like, we're all about body positivity on this entire network. We are all about, you don't have to look like you stepped off a comic page. That's not realistic or whatever. But still, you get in your head a little bit. And if you let your photographer know what your insecurities are or what's going to make you more comfortable or whatever, that shock effect sometimes when you see photos of yourself can be a lot less if you let your photographer know, because are gonna they're one step more removed because they're not in your head, and two, they take photos of people and they know what edits they're going to do or what it's going to look like or how to pose you to get around, like Lacy was talking about with your arms, if that's something you're worried about.
Literally everyone does it. Everyone. Like and it's just a matter of like, even my son, who's like a string bean, if he holds his arm against himself, it's going to flatten out. But knowing little insecurities like helps. I'm not going to go and say who I know does what and wants what, but I'm also not going to Photoshop everyone into a supermodel, because it's not realistic. It's not realistic, right? So we want to be our true selves. We just want to be the best of our true selves, I mean, even me, when I take pictures of myself, I have moles. We're live, so you can see my moles right here, right? Whenever I do my headshots, I always soften them. I leave them. They stay there, but I do soften them, and I do light wrap so I don't have a second chin showing up. So I'm not like, right?
Right. You were.
It's fine. We there's all these things, and there's no reason to get caught up about them.
Yeah, I think that is the perfect note to end on. Lacy, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If you're watching a post recording of this, make sure you back up to where Lacy had her information on where to find her, get a screenshot of that or something. For the people listening to audio only, what's the quickest way for somebody to find you if they wanted to look you up?
Go to my website, lacyclaggphotos.com. You can find everything. There's a whole cosplay tab. It keeps all the list of all the ones we're going to. It also links directly to those sites. Most all of them I run panels at. So I'm usually speaking and talking and answering questions. Every year I kind of change up my panels, but they're all pretty much the same thing, how to do better, right? How to pose. But yeah, just go to that website and you can find all the information. And if you find me at a convention and you want to do a haul shoot, if you have came to this multiverse fundraiser and you tell me, hey, I saw you on the stream, then I'm going to give you the same deal as all of my panelists as well, which sometimes it's a free like extra image on your package, or sometimes I discount the package, or sometimes I do discounts for my home shoots, things like that. Just let me know.
All right. Thanks so much, Lacy. Bye. All right, everyone. That was Lacy Clagg Photography teaching us how to pose like superheroes on the Multiverse Fundraiser, a charity event we are running to benefit Valerie Perrine and her fight with Parkinson's disease. We've got a great giveaway going for donors and people who share posts from our page also. Really quick, we've got some great prizes. I don't have time to show them all to you. I'm going to put the rules up on the screen for people who want to screenshot those very quickly. The tiny URL for people who are joining audio only, it's tinyurl.com/MVFR22. It's a great cause. Valerie has touched so many people's lives. Everyone we've talked to this weekend who's met her just she sounds like an amazing person, and she really deserves, we should rally around her the way she's made others feel supported.
The Multiverse fundraiser is a benefit for Oscar-nominated actress Valerie Perrine. Ms. Perrine is known for her roles in Superman, Slaughterhouse-Five, Lenny, and so many more. We've teamed up with documentary director Stacey Souther to raise money for Valerie's medical expenses and other needs. Every donation and every post share gives you the chance to win super prizes. Go to the website listed for details.